Hello, everybody. I want to welcome today a really special guest. This is Allie Brown, and she is an incredible expert. She is an advisor to some of the country's top influencers, and she's also the founder of The Trust. So, welcome, Allie.
It's great to see you.
Yes. So we have a lot to talk about today. We were chatting about it beforehand, and for you, I know you have had an incredible journey in entrepreneurship, particularly in the online space. So maybe share with the listeners who don't know much about your background, what has brought you to today.
That's
I know, that's a whole episode
I
in
just
itself.
started laughing. Like I don't know where do I even start? But I think for those of you who I'll give you the highlight reel is that I was probably one of the first, if not the first woman in like the email online marketing space, like probably about 20 years ago. I mean, selling ebooks, making money with email. I don't know how we did it even then. And over the years that built up into my really having this heart to serve more women and helping them step up, because it changes who they are, it changes their lives, it changes everything for them when they step into entrepreneurship. And that grew and grew over the years into large coaching, consulting, Inc. 500 ranked company. You can see all that jazz on my website if you'd like to see the list of accolades and all those wonderful things. And then, I'd say probably about 10 years ago, I started taking what I call the sharp right turn and then going, okay, you know what? I was entering my 40s at that time. I'm like, what feels good? Where do I want to do this differently than I was doing it? And deciding really particularly who I wanted to work with and felt I could serve the most versus everyone else. And that's what landed me to the Trust, which is the network that I run for 7 and 8 figure women business owners and also working with private clients today.
Yeah, and that wasn't always your specialty, right? I mean, there was a time where you had a much broader reach. You were servicing all types of entrepreneurs at all
Yeah,
stages
love
of
all,
their
serve all. I did it. Yep.
Yeah. Walking through like curtains of butterflies to announce your programs and hosting huge events in Las Vegas and doing
Yep.
it really big, right? And then there was a
Yep.
certain point in which you decided to contract. What was
Yeah.
what was part of that decision for you?
I think for me, I had to delineate the love all with the serve all, and
Yes.
actually thinking, where does that come from? I think that's the Hard Rock Cafe motto. Maybe that's where I'm getting it from. I'm like, I know it from somewhere, but like making that delineation, like I can love these people and bless them, be like, good luck, here's some blog posts to go over here, and not have to create a program every time someone has a need.
Yeah.
And I think so many women do this, and I do think there's different phases of our growth in that, the beginning, we're saying yes to everything. It's so exciting. We're going to all the events. We're tapped into these new networks and new ways of thinking. And it's just such a different place to be that we get excited about doing it all and helping people. We love helping people. And so I could do this, I could help them with that. And so don't beat yourself up if you're doing this. This is a natural process of you trying things on. I don't know anyone who started a business or what they're doing saying, okay, this is the one client I'm serving, this is the one program, and then years later, it's the exact same thing. Once in a while, but very rarely. So usually it's more of an evolution. And then, when I got to the place of stepping back and saying, you know what, this has been a fun ride. And now, what was the particular question? I want to make sure I'm telling kind of the journey of it, but what was the particular question?
Where I'm really taking this conversation is leaning into the aspect of your specialization
Mm,
where you decided to really go all in on that higher level
yeah,
entrepreneur.
yeah.
And when I first learned about you, that was so appealing to me personally
Mm,
because I was so sick of being spoken to like I was a beginner. Despite the fact that I've started and stopped different businesses over the last 20 years, I certainly wasn't looking to, be part of the babe bitch culture. I
yep.
just wasn't. And started following you and going to Iconic. And then we started working together, which we'll eventually get to. But what was part of that thinking?
Mm,
I think
yeah.
that's a really helpful perspective for people to hear about.
I mean, there's different levels of it. So there's the internal and then the external. And I'll start with the internal is that I was feeling like a dissonance
Mhm.
with my market. I was starting to wanting to talk about higher concept things, talk more about ideas and more top level strategy. And then I was getting kind of bored with tactics and implementation. I was like, well, go to these. I actually started sending people away. I'm like, well, go follow these people. They'll teach you this stuff and better than I could because I don't know. I can't keep up with everything. It all changed so quickly. So from an internal place, I felt this dissonance, and then I also felt like this a bit of a dark night of the soul a bit, and where you've been granted kind of what you've prayed for over the years. You have this incredible thing, and like, who are you, who am I to now want something different? But I knew there was something in there, like that higher calling. And as Gay Hendricks calls it in his book, it's like that genius versus the excellence. And I'd made millions in excellence. People knew me from the excellence, they knew me from what I did, but it was starting to become almost painful to
Mhm.
stay there because I had new things to say. And then externally, I I don't think I've shared this on a call before, but I'm just gonna go for it. I'm 51 now. So like the questions I was getting over and over, and don't you judge me, all of you, you've been here before, and if you're not, you will be, and then I'm gonna track you down, okay? You will be on a point, you're at a Q&A call, and like you just know what's coming, and like the ones that are in there over and over, and you're not, they're not taking action, and they're asking the same questions. And back then we were using, we weren't using Zoom and all that stuff. So that's the great thing. They can't see me like doodling and checking my email. And I mean, this, keep in mind, I've been doing this for just years and years at this point. And this was a very, sweet people, but I'm like, I can't listen to these questions again. And I saw, we'll call her Myrtle. Myrtle keeps coming around the loop, right? And so I'm on this call, and like Myrtle's coming around for the third time, and I'm texting my team. I'm like, Myrtle's got to go. I'm like, they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, disconnect her, disconnect Myrtle. Myrtle's gone. She'll call back. Don't worry. But you got to get her out of the queue. I can't.
In the South, they would say, bless her heart.
Bless her heart.
Bless
Right, let's
her
all be
heart.
clear.
Myrtle's gotta
I don't
go.
wish her any harm. I hope she has good luck, but I cannot talk to Myrtle again. And so Myrtle was disconnected. Okay. So, and this was again years and years ago. And I'm like, wow, that was like a big wake up call for me. Like, I need to change some things. And even then, hiring coaches and all this stuff. I mean, that was like, you're gonna have these like symptoms. Who did I love talking with when I would get the business owner on who was in the 7 or 8 figures? And to me, it wasn't even about the revenues. There was something that happened to them to get to that point. Who they had become now was fascinating to me to talk to. And we could talk about higher concepts and new things they could do in their business. And they had the budget to do the things. And so it was so fun. I started thinking, what if I focused only on these people? But from a number standpoint, any accountant, you tell them that's, for example, your plan, like, okay, less than 2% of all women business owners, and then the ones who would actually resonate with me. And like, I mean, the number just gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So from a paper standpoint, it was hard to justify for a while. I'm thinking, can I do this? Can I really come out and change that positioning and say, this is the only people, these are the only people that I now serve because I serve them the best, and they're actually an underserved market. And so this transition took years of making sure that I felt also these people were taken care of. We made referrals, we made sure they had all the content, but at the same time turning the ship while I was kind of gracefully exiting programs, things like that, and team, which is a whole other discussion,
Yes.
a hard discussion too, when suddenly I am changing what I want, but that's affecting everybody. They're no longer needed, right, for the programs and all that stuff. So this is so many layers that it's hard to even convey sometimes in a short conversation. But I just knew, I just had to. I got to a point where I had to. And for a lot of women, I think we wait and get to that point. Our backs against the wall. We're like, I can't do this anymore. I can't take this anymore. But often that's when our best stuff and our best decisions will come out.
One of the things I admire about working with you so much is that you listen to that voice. I think a lot of people push it away or they masculinize it. They try to think, oh, you know what? That's just the game of business and I just need to get better at it. I know that
Yeah.
was something I did for a long time because I was a multi seven-figure business owner in my 20s. And so I would be in the all male dominated CEO groups, those local CEO groups that were great because I learned financial literacy and I learned the art of sales and things that they would focus on, right? But then, so you went through this journey, you went through the process of paring down what wasn't working for you intuitively that you knew you needed to follow,
Mm.
and then birthed the trust, which is specifically for 7, 8 figure business owners. So talk about that for a minute. Let's
Yeah.
dive in.
So I didn't have that idea right away, but I knew something was percolating. And when I started to make the shift, first just saying, okay, these are the kind of clients that I'm going to be working with and specialize in. Often they would coach with me for a year or two, be like, this has been great. And I'm like, you're doing great, check back in when you need more help. And they'll be like, well, wait, I don't want to be disconnected from these other women that you've curated. Do you have something that we could do? I'm like, well, I don't really have like alumni events or a community that's after I had PTSD from running a community
Right.
for years.
Yep.
Like the 4 a.m. someone's got to get in the Facebook group because Myrtle's having a meltdown, or something like all
Myrtle's
that shit.
posting pictures of her cat and like that's got to stop.
Someone's, yeah, and that wasn't the worst of it, right? So like I had pizza. You say community to me, and I will like hide under the desk. Like I was done. And then, but what happened was they just said, "We just want to get together with more women. You attract these amazing women." I'm like, "Well, I do, and I know because I've gone to these other networking events, even for the ones $1 million plus. Some great women in the room, but just didn't have that. We're such a new breed. What we do,
Mhm.
the online stuff, the offline stuff. We're high concept. We do things differently. You're going to be if you sit there next to someone with a manufacturing company, you may not jive.
Mhm.
And
Oh yeah.
we have women who are part of multiple groups. We're not here to, take over anything, but like there was no alternative for women like us who just really keep it real. We live very holistically. We're doing cool stuff. And finally, I'm like, well, you know what? I think this is here for me. Maybe
Mhm.
this is waiting for me to do. And so I wanted something that felt like the words are so cliche. I don't use them usually in marketing, but in conversation, I can like truly this sisterhood of women entrepreneurs who have a level of trust.
Mhm.
And the word trust came to me so strongly. I remember I was actually walking by a sign in Malibu after my very first iconic that I hosted there, a very small one in LA, just to kind of see what this would be like to get back in the workshops. And I walked by, it was like a financial trust or like something to do with financial or wealth, but the gold, it was in this gold, and it was in this beautiful italic font. And I'm thinking, I just went back and I took a picture of it and it kept sitting with me. And that word to me is so important on so many levels because for women, we not only have to trust ourselves, but we have to learn to trust each other.
Yes.
And that has been a lesson for many of us as we step into our power and then realize, wow, by the time you reach 7 or 8 figures, who your friends are,
Yes.
you know what's important to you. You've proven yourself, you've proven it, right? And now you need some women you could really lay this down with and talk with, whether it's about your marriage or about your business, just like this real, just linking into them. And that's where the name came from. And right after I launched, originally when I launched, I wanted this to be only in-person events. I wanted it to be nothing online because I wanted the opposite of everything people were getting forced into. And COVID changed that very quickly. I remember us flying home from the first event in Miami and everything was starting to shut down. I'm thinking, what have I just done? What are we going to do? Now we got to do the Zoom calls, right? Like I was thinking, oh, I wasn't upset just to offer that, but I was concerned about diluting the power of what we had just created with like, oh, now we have content and, meetings. And so it's been a bit of a process, but now we've arrived at this perfect hybrid and this incredible group of women. We're close to breaking 50 of them now from so many different industries. I'm thrilled to share that we have so many women of color we attract naturally. I mean, the diversity in there on all levels, from type of business to time in the industry to their cultural backgrounds, just this beautiful mix of such incredible women that is really, when I think about what is my legacy, going to be, this is it.
Yeah. It's so beautiful. And so many people have benefited in unexpected ways inside of the trust. I remember you sharing with me that there's been joint ventures that have come out of it, and
Yeah,
people have collaborated in ways they weren't expecting and made investments together.
yeah.
And I think those are a lot of the really incredible tangible benefits coming out of the trust. I want to dive in for a minute to the intangible of being amongst all women, some of the
Mm,
benefits there, and why so much of the business education available in the market is that's catered to women is so dumbed down. And I want to go there for a minute because I think it's a important conversation worth having. And I recall wanting to be part of these male dominated CEO groups because that's where the really good conversation was happening.
yeah.
And I would tolerate, the pats on the head and being told I was, adorable, which I'm vertically
But you
challenged.
were, you
Yeah.
were, you were
And I'm
adorable. You
vertically
still are.
challenged, which, just makes you more susceptible to comments like
So
that.
you were okay.
Yeah, yeah, being asked if I'm the assistant of the man I'm standing next to. And it would get to the point where I would just joke around about it. I'd be like, actually, I'm his hydration assistant. I'm here to make sure that he keeps his water intake up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the guy would just be like, oh my gosh, she's, an amazing CEO. Don't let her fool you. But for you to really lean into this, right? Lean into not only helping women, but helping women in a very specific way at a very specific revenue tier. Why do you think this is such an unusual conversation?
Hmm. In I have a few theories, right? We've no proof, like we don't really know, but in some ways we have to step back and remember and think about too that the timeline of women in business is still so new. When you think
Yeah.
about the history of women, right? And that our mom's generation couldn't even open a bank account, right, without a man
Mm.
in many areas of the country. Like I know when I was born, I think my mom couldn't open a bank account without her husband. And and then we're putting all this pressure on ourselves now to we want everything completely, fixed in the business world and equal and all this stuff. And that's all great. We want things to change. Um, but at the same time, like let's step back and first just take that into context because I think that leads into this answer in that for many women right now, there's this huge now bifurcation of the ones that are there's this huge group of them that this is new, it's fun, shake your booty, love your life. I'm going to start a business, right? And so I'm even like moving. If you can't see me right now, I'm doing this kind of like dance.
I'm bopping my head with Allie because
I'm
I
like
know exactly
bouncy,
what you're
yeah.
talking about. I'm just waiting for you to start pointing at words.
I'm just bouncing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm bouncy. And to quote Kelly Roach, who I know you partner with as well,
Yeah.
dancing in reels is below my pay grade. I like to quote her on that. Yeah. And so, you know, there's a bit of that we have more fun. There's a bit of that, like, we can do it, break it down to steps and all that stuff. I really think though people need to start paying attention to like how basic and dumb this is getting. Like to the point that this is such a huge conversation. I feel like I'm not going to answer this accurately, but I do think women need to start now asking for better information,
Yes.
higher level conversations. And by the way, this isn't just in our space in entrepreneurialism. It's I had a client a long time ago, just as a test, like in a specific industry. She was in Canada in a major city. It was a specific industry, and she went to two different events groups. One group was a mixed co-ed, so by nature it's more male than female, a lot of these industries. So she showed up to that. Content was stellar. They had a great speaker. It was really interesting stuff she could apply. She went to the women's group of the same industry, and it was basic, just so big. I'm trying to remember the topics, but like, setting smart goals and like, a lot of like managing your time and, and that stuff's, yeah, necessary, but there was nothing about like, okay, how to prepare for the coming recession so your business doesn't tank, and here are like 3 strategies you can apply immediately to your team, and like just such a different level of thinking and conversation. And again, we want to have fun. We are holistic and we do things in a different way. So I'm not dissing any of that. But I'm saying, what I'm saying to you, if you're listening right now and you're like, there's got to be more intelligent conversation, there is. You just have to find it, because we're not going to be ranked at the top of Apple Podcasts. We're not going to have the giant events anymore with acrobats. It's just it's a different room. And I do think, like, it's interesting because in the financial industry, they talk about the mansplaining and all this stuff. And like, but we're the ones who take it.
Right.
We're the ones who sign up for it. You're in the front row. Like,
Yeah.
and then you're mad at them for trying to explain it. And maybe it's something you need to learn too, by the way. Like, I'm fine with a man explaining something to me that I don't know. But it's an interesting time, isn't it? Because I think we're going to see this increased split of the women who are like, yeah, we're different. We're taking business seriously, but we're still very holistic and having fun, versus the like boss babe, bitch, girl, badass, right?
Right.
And I have mixed feelings, because sometimes I'm like, well, yeah, I'm a babe and I'm a boss.
That can be a little bitchy sometimes. Yeah.
But am I boss babe? Like they don't say like boss stud or
Right.
dadpreneur or stuff. And I think eventually, do you want to? You're good. I think eventually this is going to phase out, just like anything, and we'll land somewhere where women can get the information, have the conversations they need in more places.
Yes. Yes. It's so funny that you say that.
What do you think? I'm curious. What do you think?
So when we look at the research, we can
Well, you have research.
Yeah, so we can observe. And I'm somebody who I'm very intuitive. I love leaning into my feelings, but I also enjoy balancing that with a left brain approach, right? And merging the two. So it's always a with and conversation. It's not without either of those factors coming into consideration. And so if we look at the research of I think it was the American Express, I hope I'm quoting the data correctly, women in business research studies that have come out. The two fastest growing segments are under 6 figures and over 7 figures, right? So there gets to be a point where I think getting to 6 figures it is about the heart and hustle. It just is. It is about trying to get your offer out there, see what resonates. You are making every sale yourself. And that takes a certain amount of grit that I think is really new to most women entrepreneurs, most entrepreneurs in general, but particularly women entrepreneurs, because we haven't been conditioned to be gritty, right? And then all of a sudden we're expected to come up with all of this grit when we're entrepreneurs. And it's sort of shocking and surprising, because it's not handed to us on a silver platter. It's not something that we're entitled to. It's something we have to earn. And I think that happens, before 6 figures. Then you get to a certain place in entrepreneurship where you're like, okay, so manifestation is great, but there's also this thing called product market fit that we need to be thinking about. There is a certain way to look at business growth from just a classic structural standpoint that's been around for decades, that works, right?
Yeah.
There's certain research and studies and frameworks and, MBA level business approaches that I think are really important to learn and get comfortable with, and understand that historically those conversations have been only happened in male dominated rooms, right? And then for women to also not lose our femininity in that transformation, I think is incredibly challenging.
Yeah.
It's really challenging, because
that's a good point too. It makes it more complex.
Yes. When we look at the frameworks, like, who created these frameworks? Jim Collins, right? Like they were all men. They were all out of Harvard Business School that were created, that we are studying marketing, finance, operations frameworks that we want to be able to utilize in our businesses to get to 7 figures in a way that's elegant, right? Like, okay, we could hustle our way to 7 figures, maybe multiple 7, but it's not going to be elegant. We're not going to enjoy the process. It's going to, take over our lives. For us to do it in a way that's elegant, we got to run it like the men. because
Hmm.
they're out golfing, right? Like they figured this out. And so, and I think women overwork, right? Because they don't use the right frameworks, but then also they tend to undermine themselves at a certain point by negating the femininity that makes women so special, I think, as a leader.
Yeah.
And
I
this
know
is this is where the conflict is.
when
Yeah.
I personally lose that, you just added a whole new element
Yeah.
to this, which is so true. Like I know when I lose who I am, when I
Mhm.
lose the
Yes.
fact that I am a woman, when I lose the way that I like to work, if I have to change who I am as a person, it never quite works. I can try putting things on, right, and formulas, but if it's going to ask me to change who I am, and that this can come from a feminine perspective or masculine, by the way,
Yes.
it just can't change who I am. And I think we're at this beautiful point though, Laura, like, which is cool, that we're realizing, okay, there's not one right way to do this.
Yeah.
We are all so different, and we're this new breed of women especially who are like creating the models from who we are, and everyone's is going to be different. There will not be one single person who has the same business and how they do it as another one. And I think we're going to see more of that as well when people start letting go of the formulas,
Yes.
and or being willing to change and try to follow something different, talk with someone new, you know. We're going to see more of that evolution. But right now, you see people very much locked into one or the other. Like you said, they're doing the crystal thing, and they're like, they're like, somehow they're getting clients. I'm like, God bless you, teach me that, because I got to
Right.
work. Put crystals on my head, whatever.
Yeah,
And then you've got
maybe
the like,
HBR should do a case study on that.
and I'm like, you need it. And I have crystals, but I don't like do a lot with them. And then, there's eight, like you said, like there's the 14-step funnel, and you have to have like, 6-part video series that you're wearing a certain type of outfit. I mean, like I've seen people like go crazy with like, you have to do it this way. Your email has to say this. And I'm thinking, no, it doesn't. Like, this is crazy. And these poor people get like gaslit into
Yes.
thinking, I know, because they've come in my door, and probably yours as well, like
Oh, yes.
they're locked in these models, and like half your job is kind of getting them to open their mind that there's other ways people do business.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's other ways people get clients.
Buy button doesn't always have to be yellow.
Yeah, totally.
There's other buy buttons that work. Yes, exactly. And that's the way entrepreneurship used to be. It's so interesting. That's how it was 10 or 20 years ago. There was nobody who taught you or me the formulas to create what it is that we've created in the
I miss those
last.
days.
Yeah.
I had no one to compare myself to. Those are my
No.
happiest days. Those are my happiest days of my life. Like when I was besides having my children, make that clear if they ever listen to this.
You guys
When I was
matter.
single in New York, those are my happiest. When I had no one to look at, I had no one to compare myself to. It was so, I just wake up and do me, and I would figure out like, okay, I'm gonna go knock on doors today, and I think I'm gonna go talk to these types of people and see if they're interested. And oh my gosh, it feels so liberating to think of it that way now. Now you do research, right? Like you go look at, typically what people do is they look at what everyone else is doing, and then they take notes and or sign up for the whole kit and caboodle, like give me the whole formulas. Take and choose what works for you. It's one of the things I've liked about you, Laura, and respect about you so much, is you're not locked into a model as well. You bring so much, insight from all the businesses that you run personally, that also your clients bring to you, right? We're always learning new things. Our clients bring things. Oh, I haven't seen that before, and it's working. I'll make a note. Um, you've got to have that holistic view right now. If you're going to work with a coach, and if you listen, you need somebody who is bringing to the table more than one way to do this.
Yes. Yes. Because that's, in a lot of ways, that's their fear and uncertainty coming up in their coaching, right? Because I don't necessarily have the skills for pattern recognition, or I haven't developed myself in a variety of different areas of business to be able to recommend more than one approach. And I think that is probably phasing out. And that's what I love so much about what you do, and why you love servicing the types of entrepreneurs that you help in the trust, and why you've decided to make it all women. I think it's fascinating, and it's admirable, and it's needed. It is so needed, which is evident by the conversation that we had. So thinking about our work together, I mean, when you came to me and said, is this something that you could help me build out as a marketing and sales system? I have to tell you, I was blown away and honored because I have so much respect for you. And I know how well regarded you are in the industry. And what were some of the things that you were looking for in our work together?
Yeah. So I had just made the decision that I wanted to grow a larger team again, had invested in team, and still felt like I needed almost um a copy of myself, like someone who thinks like I do to come help work with the team. Originally, that's why, right? Because I'm like, Lauren Meyer, I got off the interview with you on my show, Glambition Radio, which is a great interview. You should go listen to that one with
Yes.
Lauren Meyer. And I'm like, this chick knows what she's doing. Get her on the phone. And let's see if she can work with me and the team. And that way I don't have to teach them and hold their hand so much. Laura's very patient and calming and speaks like this. And maybe it'll all work out, right? Because I was like impatient, trying to hire people and like, but I realized a lot of the stuff was still in my head from over
Mhm.
the years. And I'm like, this is perfect. We'll pull her in as our fractional CMO and work with the team. And it was great. The team members in the end, they're gone, but I still have you. Because
Which is not my
it,
go-to strategy.
no, I know you're like, don't worry, if Laura comes in, the whole team will blow up. No, but it was a gift because in the end, finally, I mean, the whole time I just wanted to talk with you. And I
Mhm.
realized, my gosh, we can probably get this done now. And now I'm so much clearer also on how we're going to hire. So, really, it was great to have someone come in at that higher level, be patient with the team and me on there. We make the plans together and then they go implement. I mean, that's the dream, right? And I think there's so many creative entrepreneurs like myself who that's really what they need more than anything is someone coming in at that higher level, the bird's eye view. Here's, you got your feet in a lot of places in the industry saying, okay, here's some things I'd recommend. Which direction do you want to go? And now we're going to map out the plan. Let's decide who's going to do what piece of the plan. It's brilliant. And that's why I still, have you and am happy to be working with you, on call during the fall as we move through things in different timing and so that's been just a pleasure.
That's so wonderful to hear. Is there anything specific that comes to mind that, or even unexpected ways that you experience value with our work together?
Um, I like, for me, it was great to put the visuals on things. So when we would come up with a plan, like there was the visual plan. It wasn't just the talking. It was actually documented. It was assigned, really like the tying the bow on things, because I think that's a lot what a lot of us don't do. I'll go into a meeting and say, okay, that's what you're all doing great, and then it's over and it's not over. It needs to be
Right.
meticulously mapped out. And I think that's where that gap has been, is that meticulous mapping out of things.
And I think it's easy to go broad instead of deep, right? When we're thinking about our marketing plan, it's easy to, I know when we first started together, and I think intuitively you had known it wasn't the right approach, but you were looking for another opinion. You're almost looking like for another doctor's like third opinion
Yeah.
to make sure. But it was this sort of really broad approach when I think you had so much available to you to be able to go deep instead.
Hmm.
And that's what
Hmm.
we did together. And I'll just say for me, what was unexpected and joyful is how soulful you are. And I didn't know that about you coming into our work together. I knew that you were very prestigious, that you had, brilliant, and that you had all this incredible experience. But when I saw how soulful you are with your work and how you rely on that so much to make decisions and follow your intuition, and
Mm.
that was really exciting to see the way in which you approach your business, not only from an intellectual standpoint, but from that really strong intuitive voice.
Mm.
And that was, it was just, it's like the best way I could describe you. If somebody was to say, what's
Mm.
Allie like behind the scenes? I would say she's very soulful.
I like that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much for coming here, talking about the trust, talking about our work together. If somebody is either interested in the trust or just wants to learn more about the best way to connect with you, where should they go?
Yeah, just go to allybrown.com. That'll take you everywhere, to whether it's the Glambition Radio podcast or, live experiences. The trust is for seven figures and above. Go to jointhetrust.org. I also have an event coming up this fall, which is a great way to try out, how I do things, come experience like how I work and do things differently. You'll meet many of the members of the trust. That's iconic with allybrown.com.
Yes. And I'll be there
Called
too.
the
So
Fantastic. What a
come join
room,
us.
man. Like, just,
Yes.
there's nothing like it. And I love it just as much as everyone else. Like the combination and collection of wisdom in that room and the women in there. It's fantastic. So I tell people, just, come to that, if anything, and you'll see it's a whole new world.
It is. It's so inspiring. I love Iconic so much. The first time I came to your event, to Iconic, it felt like home. That's how it felt like to me. I was
like it.
finally, not surrounded by people jumping up and down for some kind of club award that I didn't completely understand. It was,
There was no balloon arch.
there was no balloon arch.
Yeah.
Yes, there was.
There was no.
We weren't handed pom-poms when we walked in the door, expected to do some kind of
Oh
secret
my.
cheer. Yeah.
I didn't. Okay, you got to tell me later who that
Yeah,
was.
I'll
I
fill
know
you in.
nothing about it. Okay.
Yeah. Which, again, we like having fun, as you can tell. Allie and I laugh a lot, behind the scenes too. But ultimately, being able to be in that room filled with wisdom, inspiration, and forward thinking is what will help you create the momentum in your business that you might be missing. So you definitely want to get in that room.
No pom-poms. I'm gonna have a little thing with a line through the red, like the Ghostbusters thing, the line through it, so no pom-poms.
No pom-poms. If you're a college cheerleader, leave them at home. All right. Well, thank you so much, Allie, for being here. It's a fantastic conversation and a joy to have you.
Thanks, Laura.